Have you ever laid awake at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling, replaying a single conversation in your head over and over again? You said one small thing, and now your brain is dissecting every possible reaction, tone, and hidden meaning. You try to stop, but your mind doesn't listen. It's like a storm that won't pass. Thoughts crashing, questions spinning. People tell you, you're overthinking. But what if you're not? What if what they call overthinking is actually your mind's way of searching for truth? Because somewhere inside you, there's a deeper voice whispering, something isn't adding up. And until you find it, your mind refuses to rest. Carl Jung understood this torment better than most. He said, "People don't have ideas. Ideas have people. Your thoughts, your patterns, your worries, they're not random. They're messengers. And when you ignore them, they grow louder. So let's stop calling you an overthinker. Let's call you what you really are, a seeker. Someone trying to make sense of a world that often doesn't. Someone whose mind refuses to accept shallow answers. Someone who can silence the noise because buried in that noise is a signal, the truth you are meant to uncover. Jung believed that the mind doesn't torment us for fun. It torments us for meaning. Every intrusive thought, every replayed memory, every what if, it's your psyche saying, look closer, there's something here you haven't faced yet. Overthinking isn't a flaw. It is a symptom of misalignment, a signal that what you feel and what you were pretending to feel don't match. And the deeper the mismatch, the louder the mind gets. You see, clarity isn't something that arrives fully formed. It's carved out of chaos. And you, right now, are in that carving process. But here's the paradox. The more we chase clarity with force, the more it slips away. Because clarity doesn't come from control, it comes from surrender. When you fight your thoughts, they fight back. When you try to suppress your emotions, they find another way to surface. That's the law of the psyche. What you resist, persists. So Jung would say, stop trying to silence the storm. Listen to it. What is it trying to tell you? What fear is hiding underneath your questions? What truth are you avoiding by calling yourself an overthinker? Maybe it is not that you think too much. Maybe it is that you feel too much, and no one ever taught you how to handle that kind of depth. Modern life doesn't help, does it? We live in an age of instant opinions and shallow distractions. We scroll for answers that never satisfy. We drown in stimulation, but starve for meaning. And when a mind like yours, deep, curious, questioning, tries to find peace in that noise, it collapses into anxiety. But Jung would smile and say, good, let it collapse. Because in that collapse, something sacred begins, the death of illusion. When the noise becomes unbearable, the truth begins to whisper, and the whisper says, stop trying to fix the world outside. Start listening to the world inside. That's where your clarity lives, not in the opinions of others, not in the reassurance you keep begging for, but in that quiet, sacred space within you, the one that's been waiting for you to stop running long enough to listen. Let's be honest. Overthinking often looks like chaos on the surface, but beneath it lies something pure, a longing to understand. To connect the dots between who you are and who you're becoming, between what you've lost and what you still hope for. It's your inner self, your shadow, as Jung called it, knocking on the door. When you feel restless, it's because your shadow wants to be seen. When you can't stop analyzing someone's words, it's because they touched something unhealed. When your mind spirals at night, it's because your soul is begging for integration, not silence. So no, you're not broken. You're not too much. You're just in the middle of an awakening. And here's the part nobody tells you. The mind doesn't need fixing. It needs understanding. You're not supposed to stop thinking. You're supposed to start seeing what your thoughts are pointing toward. Each worry is a clue. Each what if is a mirror. Each sleepless night is a lesson in disguise. The question is, will you look deeper? Because the people who truly grow are the ones who learn to decode their chaos. They don't numb it, they don't escape it. They listen to it until it makes sense. And when it finally does, they realize that what they called overthinking was actually the soul's way of saying, "You're not done learning yet." So the next time someone tells you to stop overthinking, smile. Because they're asking you to silence the very thing that's trying to save you. You're not overthinking. You're seeking clarity. And clarity doesn't come from still waters. It comes from storms. Carl Jung would tell you, in all chaos there is a cosmos. In all disorder a secret order. And that secret order, it's waiting for you to see it. They call it overthinking because they don't understand what it's like to feel everything. To notice the hesitation in someone's voice. To sense the tension behind their smile. To read between the lines of every sentence and still feel like something's missing. But Carl Jung would say, you're not broken for feeling this deeply. You're just awake in a world that's half asleep. Because what most people call overthinking is often the mind's way of protecting the heart. You don't spiral because you enjoy suffering. You spiral because you see too much, and your heart wants to make sense of it. Jung believed that when we see life too clearly, it can actually hurt. Because clarity doesn't just show you truth, it shows you illusions too. It exposes how people pretend, how they hide, how they wear masks just to feel accepted. And once you see through that, you can't unsee it. You start noticing the games people play, the emptiness in small talk, the way everyone's running from something they refuse to name. That's why your mind never stops. It's not trying to torture you. It's trying to reconcile what you see with what you feel, to bridge the gap between the outer world's noise and your inner world's truth. And that's not insanity. That's consciousness evolving. But there's a danger in this too. Because the deeper you see, the lonelier it can get. You begin to realize that understanding everything doesn't always lead to peace. Sometimes it leads to isolation. You wonder, why do I care so much? Why can't I just let things go like everyone else? The truth is, you can't let them go because your psyche won't let you lie to yourself. You can't numb what you know. You can't pretend ignorance once awareness has begun. Jung once said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. And that's the exact storm you're caught in. You're waking up to truths that most people spend their lives avoiding. But here's where things begin to shift. Because in Jungian psychology, awareness isn't the final destination. It's the doorway. The doorway to integration. When your mind begins to spiral, you're actually standing at the threshold of something profound. The thoughts that keep looping aren't meant to trap you. They're meant to guide you inward. Think of it like this. Your conscious mind is the surface of a vast ocean. Your unconscious, everything you've suppressed, forgotten, or denied, lies beneath. And when you overthink, it's not random waves disturbing you. It's the deep calling to the surface. Every recurring thought is like a ripple from below whispering, there's something down here you haven't faced yet. Maybe it's the fear of rejection. Maybe it's guilt you never forgave yourself for. Maybe it's grief you buried under strength. Whatever it is, the overthinking isn't the problem. It's the invitation. Most people fight this process. They distract themselves, scroll endlessly, drown the silence with noise. But you feel it. You sit with it. And that's why you suffer. But it's also why you grow. Because the truth is, overthinking is painful only when you resist what it's trying to show you. Once you stop resisting, once you turn toward it, something miraculous happens. The spiral begins to straighten. You begin to see patterns. You realize, wait, this isn't random. These thoughts repeat because they're pointing toward the same unresolved wound. And the moment you see that, something shifts inside you. The chaos starts to make sense. Jung compared this process to alchemy. In ancient times, alchemists tried to turn base metal into gold. But Jung said, the real alchemy is psychological. It's turning your chaos into consciousness, your suffering into wisdom. So every night you lie awake, lost in your thoughts. You're not wasting time. You're doing the work of an inner alchemist. You're melting old beliefs, old fears, old versions of yourself in the fire of awareness. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, you're transforming. But transformation requires trust. And that's the hardest part for thinkers like you. You crave control. You want answers now. You want certainty. But Jung reminds us, clarity doesn't come through control. It comes through surrender. When you stop fighting your own depth, when you allow your thoughts to speak their truth, you begin to find the message buried beneath the noise. You realize that your mind isn't your enemy. It's your mirror. And every reflection, no matter how dark, is trying to help you see yourself more clearly. So the next time your thoughts start to spiral, don't say, "I'm overthinking." Say, "Something within me is trying to be understood." Because that's the truth Jung wanted you to know. Your mind is not malfunctioning. It's maturing. Overthinking is not confusion. It's evolution. It's your psyche demanding that your soul wake up. And once you begin to see it that way, you stop fearing your thoughts and start learning from them. That's the beginning of real peace, not silence of the mind, but understanding of it. Because the moment you understand your thoughts, they stop controlling you. And that's how clarity begins. Not as light from above, but as courage from within. You've probably noticed it, that silent war inside you. One part of you wants proof, logic, reason. The other part whispers, "Trust your gut." And somewhere in between you stand, torn, restless, and exhausted. Carl Jung understood this conflict better than anyone. He believed every human being lives between two great forces, the rational mind and the intuitive soul. When these two are out of balance, the psyche suffers. When they unite, that's when real clarity is born. But here's the thing. Our society worships logic. We're told that intuition is unreliable, that feelings are distractions, that the only truth worth trusting is the one you can measure or prove. So, we learn to silence our instincts, to betray our gut just to appear reasonable. We analyze every emotion, dissect every choice, and end up losing touch with the one compass that never lies, our inner knowing. But Jung warned, the rational attitude which permits us to declare objective values as valid at all costs is the greatest danger to our humanity. He wasn't saying logic is bad. He was saying logic without soul becomes a cage. Because here's the irony. You can think your way into madness, but you can't think your way into peace. Peace isn't found in analysis, it's found in alignment. Let's be honest, when life breaks you, your mind rushes in to fix it. You replay the past, trying to find the mistake. You forecast the future, trying to prevent the next fall. You calculate, compare, control. And yet, the more you think, the worse it gets. Because clarity doesn't come from adding more thoughts. It comes from listening to what your thoughts are trying to avoid. That's the paradox Jung uncovered. The conscious mind keeps searching outward for certainty, but the unconscious keeps whispering, "Look within." Jung called this tension enantiodromia, the process by which everything turns into its opposite. When you over-identify with logic, emotion rises to balance it. When you repress feeling, the psyche rebels. That's why sometimes your intuition feels chaotic, because it's fighting to be heard, and if you ignore it long enough, it finds other ways to speak. Through anxiety, through dreams, through synchronicities that feel too strange to be coincidences. You might see the same symbol, the same word, the same situation repeating itself, not because the universe is teasing you, but because your unconscious is screaming, "You still haven't learned what this means." The tragedy is that most people never pause to listen. They think intuition is some mystical gift reserved for the spiritual. But Jung believed it's something far more human, a direct line to the truth buried within you. He said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And awakening isn't comfortable, because when you look inward, you realize how much of your life was built on what others told you to believe. You see that many of your logical choices were just ways to please, to survive, to belong. That's when the overthinking begins to make sense. You weren't confused, you were conflicted. Your logic wanted safety, your intuition wanted truth, and they've been fighting for years. So how do you end this war? How do you bring peace to the battlefield inside your mind? By learning to let both sides speak. When logic says, "This doesn't make sense," you pause and let intuition whisper, "But it feels right." When intuition says, "I'm afraid," you let logic soothe it. Let's look closer. What's the pattern here? That's inner integration, the very heart of Jung's philosophy. Because wholeness isn't about silencing one voice. It's about letting every voice have its turn. Think about it. Every time you've ignored your gut, you've felt it, haven't you? That quiet ache of regret that comes after doing the right thing that wasn't right for you. And every time you followed your intuition, even when it terrified you, you discovered something sacred. That life rewards authenticity more than obedience. That's what Jung meant by individuation, the process of becoming your truest self. Not the self society approves of, but the self your soul recognizes. And that process begins the moment you start trusting your inner signals as much as you trust external logic. But here's the catch. Intuition doesn't shout. It speaks in symbols, in feelings, in the language of the unconscious. It hides in your dreams, your art, your restlessness, and your so-called irrational impulses. It's the quiet tug that says, "This isn't your path." The strange pull toward something you can't explain. The sense of déjà vu that feels like memory from another life. Most people dismiss it. You feel it deeply. That's why you overthink. Because you sense something real moving beneath your thoughts, and you're trying to decode it. So here's the truth Jung would whisper to you. You don't need to kill your mind to hear your intuition. You just need to make peace between them. Let logic handle the details. Let intuition guide the direction, and watch what happens when they finally start working together. You stop chasing clarity, and clarity starts finding you. Because the ultimate form of intelligence is not thinking harder, it's listening deeper. And once you learn that, you realize that your so-called overthinking was never a curse. It was a bridge. A bridge between the seen and unseen, between reason and soul, between the mind that doubts and the heart that already knows. And that's where Jung's truth becomes your power. You were never meant to choose between logic and intuition. You were meant to become the balance itself. Let's start with a strange but beautiful truth. You're not actually lost. You've just forgotten how to listen. Carl Jung believed that clarity doesn't come from discovering something new. It comes from remembering what your soul already knows. Every answer you're searching for is buried inside you, beneath the noise, the fear, the masks you've learned to wear. You don't find clarity by adding, you find it by stripping away. But that's terrifying, isn't it? Because the moment you start peeling back the layers, you realize how many of your thoughts don't belong to you. Your definition of success, your idea of love, your version of happiness, they were all planted by parents, teachers, society, religion. You didn't choose them. They were chosen for you. And you've been trying to live by them ever since. No wonder you feel uncertain. No wonder you overthink. You're trying to navigate life using someone else's map. Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive the world. It helps us fit in, get approval, stay safe. But the more we cling to the persona, the further we drift from the truth of who we are. And here's the cruel irony. The more you chase clarity from outside, through validation, achievement, or love, the blurrier everything becomes inside. Because clarity doesn't come from the mask, it comes from the one behind it. That's why Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You see, your confusion is not a flaw, it's a signal. It's the psyche's way of saying, you're not living in alignment anymore. Think of it like this. Imagine your life as a mirror. Every thought, every person, every situation is a reflection trying to show you something about yourself. When you hate someone's arrogance, maybe it's because it mirrors the confidence you've suppressed. When you envy someone's peace, maybe it's because your soul is starving for stillness. When you feel unseen, maybe it's because you've forgotten how to see yourself. That's the dark beauty of Jung's philosophy. Every shadow in your life is a teacher, and every emotion you reject is a messenger. So the real question isn't, how do I find clarity? It's, what part of me am I still refusing to see? Most people think clarity feels like a light bulb moment. But often, it feels like heartbreak. It's the moment you realize that some friendships were built on your silence, that some dreams were never yours to begin with, that some versions of yourself have to die so the real one can finally breathe. That's why clarity hurts. It requires honesty, and honesty always burns before it heals. But once you endure that fire, something incredible happens. You stop needing life to make sense. You stop begging people to understand you. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding. Because once you know who you are, really know, confusion loses its power. Jung called this moment individuation, the process of becoming a complete, unified being. It's not about being perfect. It's about becoming whole. When you reach this stage, the noise fades. You begin to notice that clarity doesn't shout, it whispers. It shows up as a quiet sense of knowing, the kind that doesn't need validation or applause. It's a peace that says, I don't know where I'm going yet, but I trust myself to get there. That's the difference between people who chase meaning and people who embody it. The first group wants life to hand them a map. The second realizes they are the map. But make no mistake, this clarity comes at a cost. It demands that you lose everything false. You'll outgrow old beliefs, outdated identities, even people you once loved. You'll feel isolated at times, because not everyone is ready to see you without your mask. And that's okay. Because Jung believed the journey to self-awareness is not a group expedition. It's a pilgrimage. You walk it alone, but you come back more connected than ever. When you finally reach that inner stillness, you'll notice how the world changes around you. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You stop reacting to chaos. You start responding with clarity. You stop chasing relationships that drain you and attract ones that mirror your growth. You stop running from your shadow and start walking beside it. That's when life stops feeling like a storm and starts feeling like rhythm. Because now, you're not resisting the flow. You are the flow. Here's the secret Jung left us with. True clarity doesn't come when you control your thoughts. It comes when you understand them. It doesn't come when you silence the noise. It comes when you realize you're not the noise. You are the one listening. And once you realize that, everything softens. You stop fighting your uncertainty and start befriending it. You stop seeking answers and start living them. That's when life begins to feel lighter. Because clarity was never a destination. It was the home you forgot you had inside you all along. So if you've ever been told you think too much, remember this. You don't overthink because you're broken. You overthink because you care. Because your mind is trying to decode a world that no one ever taught you how to understand. And that sensitivity, that deep awareness, is not your weakness. It's your gift. Use it. Let it turn confusion into insight, pain into understanding, and thought into wisdom. Because the more you see yourself clearly, the more clearly you'll see life itself. And if this message resonated with you, if something deep inside you whispered yes while listening, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because somewhere out there, someone else is overthinking their way toward awakening too. And maybe, just maybe, your clarity will be the light that helps them remember their own.